Hey everybody, I'm back. This is part 2 of the what will we call this? We'll call this the Dan Sickles Henry Wickoff dovetail talk. I'm just kidding. I'm gonna do a lot better than the actual title. And I'm not gonna really mention these monuments that I'm walking around and showing you. I'm just going to show them to you as I just walk around and talk. So picking up where we left off, so interesting connections. Dan Sickles, who is drumming up support for for his Excelsior Brigade, he is looking forward to becoming a general, but he is not a general yet. The war has started. He's running into real troubles. He's got the brigade together, but he's running into roadblocks, matters of course money, because he can't pay his men yet, so on and so forth. That eventually works out, but how it works out is a very interesting story. So where we left off, I also mentioned that he eventually had a curious friendship with a man who was much like himself, an interlocutor. That is a person who is a go-between. That is a person who is powerful in their own right as far as making connections. An interlocutor is actually sometimes, unfortunately, or sometimes intentionally, often ends up being something of a double agent, working both ends, working for both sides, for their own gain, if you will. Okay, so that's what an interlocutor is. So we've got interlocutor Dan Sickles, and he also runs into somebody a little, about around this time, named Chevalier Henry Wickoff. Now this is a very mysterious man, and I haven't gotten to the bottom of his background, and I haven't dug up all the dirt on him yet. But what we can tell you about him, I'm going to read a little bit from a really good article I found that draws from other sources that are mentioned in the article. This guy was also a diplomat. Again, Sickles was a diplomat for Buchanan, and Wickoff was a diplomat in both England as well as France, and he may have had closer connections to France, and actually even the Napoleon family, the Napoleonic family. He was pretty close with them also, and it stands to reason. If he was close with the Napoleonic the Napoleons of France, the Napoleon dynasty, then he may have very well had connections to the Rothschild dynasty as well. And I'm not here to address that part, so I'm going to blow on right by it. But don't forget it. All these things are important, and all these things tie in. Don't forget, at this time, America was still not absolutely uncontested. There was a revolution. Then there was the War of 1812. Things were still not settled. People were still vying for control. People were still, trying to make their way westward and claim new lands for themselves. A lot of stuff was up in the air, but the one goal that everybody had in common was conquest. Conquest, like I said in the last video. All right, so getting back to Wickoff. Henry Wickoff was, and they don't really mention how he got his official accolades, but he was officially an ambassador for England, an ambassador for France. He was knighted by France as well as, I believe, Spain. And I hope you guys read up more on him, but a little bit on him from lincolnswhitehouse.org, which is a really good website. Other exotic aspects to Wickoff's background. Sickles' biographer Thomas Canley wrote that Wickoff had served time in Italy. Wait, that's not the paragraph I wanted to read. I'm sorry. Here we go. Sorry. Historian Don C. Seitz wrote that Wickoff also tried to keep blah, 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 blah. Noted Washington journalist John W. Forney. He has seen more of the world than most men, has mingled with society of every shade and grade, has tasted of poverty and affluence, talks several languages fluently, is skilled in etiquette, art, and literature. These all sound like somebody who is being groomed. In other words, this person is describing basically an agent. Okay? You can call it different things if you know, you can call it an agent, you can call it a contractor, you can call it a spy, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it official or off the books. But these things are absolutely describing somebody of that nature. Well-traveled, so on and so forth, right? Ranging through all society, he can talk of love, law, literature, and war, can describe the rules and thinkers of his time, can gossip of courts and cabinets, of the salon of commerce and the church, of the peer and pauper, of Dickens and Thackeray, General Sickles and Tammany Hall, and the inner life of almost any capital in the world. So we're talking about a guy who's been around, seen some things, and has some connections. So, okay, to wrap up the fun part of the story. Like I said, part of Lincoln's must have been a juicy part, right? You know, part that the press was really looking forward to hearing. Part and probably, you know, hinting towards you know, the months and years to come. So in Lincoln's first state of address to the Union, part of that speech got linked, and it was almost certainly you know, that there's a lot of proof, you know, that is circumstantial and all basically leads to Mary Todd Lincoln linking it to Wyckoff. Okay, now I'm not saying, I'm not implying that Sickles had anything to do with this at all, but by this time he had befriended Wyckoff, and he got Wyckoff out of it. And read you another fun passage from this article. Blah 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 blah. Well, this is also important. No, that's going to take up too much time. This is good. Okay, so in this diary entry of November 3rd, 1861, the London Times, William Russell Howard observed, "I hear that disgusting fellow Wyckoff is master of your situation at the White House. Mrs. L's," meaning Mrs. Lincoln's, "meanness is beyond belief. He related reports that Watt had been detached from the army to oversee cooking at the White House, and that the temperamental Mrs. Lincoln was trying to cook the books by shifting entertainment expenses into the landscaping account for the White House." Well, that's funny because they ended up the landscaping account, right? They ended up by how they got rid of, I'm sorry, the situation with the leak of the speech was they basically framed the gardener. They framed the gardener of the White House and forced him to admit that he solely saw it, that he made handwritten notes, that he copied it, and that it was all him and that nobody else had anything to do with it. He was obviously very much threatened, probably with his life or the life of his family and children. But they basically framed the gardener, and that was all Sickles. Sickles basically framed the gardener, i.e. threatened and strong-armed the gardener into taking the fall for the leak at the White House over the State of the Union speech. But you know, getting back to the main points, long story short, Sickles was a very, very connected person, and he had a lot of people looking out for him, including, like I said, so you know, at that point, you know, the current president kind of owes him. Lincoln kind of owes him. He's in good with Mary Todd Lincoln. Mary Todd Lincoln thinks Daniel Sickles is a swell dude. That's crazy, right? But I mean, that's the deal, that, you know, he was a charmer, and that's what these people do, and that's how they accomplish what they accomplish. They charm people, they sweet talk, they embellish, they lie, whatever. They do whatever they have to do to get what they want. They're sociopaths, in other words. That's right. I called Dan Sickles a sociopath, as are many, many other people who, back then as well as today, are actually admired. Anyways, hope you had some more fun, a little more rambling about Sickles. I would like to add one last thing. While there's no conclusive proof that Sickles was a Mason, there's something interesting called the General Amon Razon and Freemason's Guide. You're not going to be able to see this at all. And it was written right there by a Dan Sickles. So he may not have been a Mason, but he had a actually pretty intimate knowledge of the Masons. If he was not a Mason himself, he certainly had lots of friends who were. And I can't stress enough that part of this story, that, you know, certain folks have been embedded in our culture, in our society, in our government for longer than you understand, to basically set up false scenarios and to basically divide this nation when it's appropriate and when it suits them, so they can achieve more ends in the future, in the oncoming decades. Anyhow, guys, I'm up to 10 minutes. I didn't do the greatest job, but hopefully you learned something new. We will pick this up again soon.